Hello there. A hearty welcome to Moody Institute of Science. For several years here at the laboratory, we've been studying the human senses. And the deeper we go into the subject, the more fascinating and wonderful it becomes. As we explore the mysteries of sense perception together, we're going to have a lot of fun. There'll be some surprises and quite a few chuckles. But also, we're going to discover that there is real significance in the study. How many senses are there? Well, more than the traditional 5. A lot more. But it's not without reason that these 5 have been called the windows of the soul. The sense. As we began our study of the mysteries of sense perception, one of the first things we had to recognize is the fact that we do not see with our eyes or hear with our ears. These are merely the external receptors. The real seat of sense perception is in the brain. It is here that we see and hear and detect odors and taste our food and otherwise sense the world around us. And it's a good thing that this is so. For example, if seeing were done only in the eye, everything would be upside down to us. The eye is actually a miniature camera. Just as in a camera, the lens of the eye forms the image upside down. The image is then inverted by the brain so that it appears right side up. Now, what would happen if a lens system were used to form the image right side up? Well, the brain would immediately invert the image so that it would be upside down. But would this condition be permanent? To answer this question, we asked Mr. Gratz, our optical expert, to design for us a pair of inverting spectacles. While the spectacles were being constructed in our shop, we faced the problem of who was going to wear the things continuously for several weeks. So we decided to have an election. And now, you'll want to meet our unlucky winner. That's right, me. Even from the first, it was possible to walk in this topsy-turvy fashion, but it didn't take long to develop a rollicking case of seasickness. We decided that for your sake as well as ours, we'd better conduct our first test sitting down. However, just sitting down wasn't so easy. Even the simplest tasks were at first impossible. No amount of concentration or effort could overcome the compulsion to reach in the wrong direction. The inverting spectacles had to be worn every waking moment during the entire period of the experiment. Anytime the glasses were removed, the eyes were closed or fully covered. Walking to work upside down was an exhausting experience, but it provided a valuable period of relearning and reorientation. It also caused quite a stir in the neighborhood. Gradually, it became easier to get around in this upside-down world. By a slow and painful process, the image in the brain had been erected. At this point, we decided to devise a convincing demonstration showing that reorientation had been achieved. The test with the motorcycle went so well that we decided to extend the experiment to flying an airplane, where visual coordination and depth perception are even more critical. The flight lasted more than an hour, during which all normal flight maneuvers were executed. In performing the experiment with the inverting spectacles, we became very much aware of how important it is that seeing is done in the brain, not just in the eye.
Check 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Check 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Boom, brr, brr, boom, brr, brr, boom, brr, brr, boom. Boom, brr, brr, boom, brr, brr, boom, brr, brr, boom. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Boom, brr, brr, boom, brr, brr, boom, brr, brr, boom. And a sparkle in your thoughts lends to a sparkle in your eyes. And how lovely this evening at the archive of AV Geeks. Boom, brr, brr, boom, brr, brr, boom, brr, brr, boom. There are many lovely moths. There are many lovely moths. 160,000 species of moth worldwide, including many like the Acta luna moth of the Saturnaceae, named after Greek gods. The Bombyx mori, or the silkworm moth that makes the clothing we wear and the source of war for thousands of years. The Helicoverpa zea, the scourge of agricultural crops. They eat over 1,000 different species of plant, many of the ones that we love so much. But many of the lovely moths are LBMs, or little brown moths that one hardly ever notices. The Lepidoptera, the butterfly, the moth. How do we know it's a butterfly or moth? How do we know as they come into our houses or windows? It's very simple. They are a true insect. They have a head, a thorax, and an abdomen. They also have long and lovely antennae, wait for it, that are chemoreceptive to their host plants and to their mates. And they have 2 pairs, wait for it, of wings. You're sitting pretty in the afternoon, waiting perhaps in the evening and the warm, sunny summer days, too hot to stay indoors, sitting outside, and you have a visitor come to your porch light. How do you know it's a Lepidoptera? How do you know it's a lovely moth? The proboscis. Proboscis. The proboscis is a feeding tube that is inserted into their host plants to suck the lovely nectar out of those host plants. In some species of moths, however, not only do they enjoy the libations of nectar, but they also enjoy the eye fluids of bovines and the blood of children. The life cycle. The life cycle of the moth starts with the adult mating, dispersing, egg laying. Eggs are laid sometimes 30, 40, 50 or more by a single female. The eggs hatch to a neonate and the larva grows 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 instars. The larva of the moth has a head, an anus, and is a large, giant gut. Largely because many moths don't even feed as adults. The miracle of metamorphosis. The larva, after it finishes its 5th instar, molts into a pupa or chrysalis, goes through the miracle of metamorphosis back to adulthood. Moths can have multiple generations per year, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 generations per year, depending on where they live. Many are short-lived, of course, but some can live, our oldest moths, for up to 7 years. And of course, this inspires a song. Da 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 da.
Fly me to the blossom that I've been to once before. Let me suck the nectar of a flower I adore. In other words, I'm a lovely moth. In other words, feeding is my goal in life. Fill my life with pheromones and let me mate again once more. For all I long in my limited lifespan is to lay these eggs I adore. In other words, moth, you smell good. In other words, I appreciate your pheromones. This host plant is perfect for the first instar larvae to emerge. In other words, it's my host plant. In other words, My species likes to go here.
Solanaceous
Solanaceous plant.
Irwin, back to you, dear.
Hello there. Welcome to Moody Institute of Science. Say, do you like mystery stories? Well, we have one for you. In the tradition of all good mysteries, it's complete with a haunted house and ghosts out of the past. A science lab seems a strange place to look for ghosts, doesn't it? But our story is true. Before we're finished, I think you'll agree that truth is stranger than the strangest fiction. The mystery is time. The haunted house is space. In our true story, the ghosts travel at the speed of light, and they come straight out of the past. Your past. Yes, time is a mysterious thing. Have you ever tried to define time? The harder you search for a definition, the more elusive it becomes. We're going to explore the mystery of time in the laboratory. Before we find the ghosts, we'll have to sort through some facts, but we'll find them, for they're very real. Hello, Pete. How are things going?
Fine, Dr. Moon. We're about ready to roll on a high-speed shot.
Oh, that's great. Mr. Margosian is one of our skilled technicians here at Moody Institute of Science. In addition to a rich background of photographic experience, he's shown a more than usual interest in the subject of time. Pete, you suppose you could tell us just a bit about the equipment that you use?
I'd be glad to. The most important piece of equipment is right here. It's a super high-speed camera. I like to call it a time microscope. It does to time what the microscope does to physical dimension. It enlarges a period of time instead of a bit of matter.
How fast will the camera be running on this tape, Pete?
About 3,000 frames per second.
Let's see. That'll stretch 1 second into about 2 minutes, won't it?
Yes, 2 minutes and 5 seconds to be exact. And this will give us an opportunity to observe some interesting properties in liquids. We're using milk in this experiment because it photographs easily. I'll adjust the flow until it appears a fine trickle to the eye. There. Would you start the camera, Doctor?
Now?
Ready?
The trickle of milk and the splash look quite different now, don't they? But they aren't any different. The liquid is behaving in its usual manner. We've merely changed our time reference. Did you ever drop a steel ball into a bowl of milk? There's probably no good reason why you should have, but it does make an interesting high-speed study. Watch. The high-speed camera checks the fall, and the steel ball seems to float slowly downward to disappear beneath the surface of the liquid. Then, when you've almost forgotten about it, the ball slowly bounces back. Don't be confused now. This isn't one of the ghosts we were talking about. It's just the milk that follows the ball into the air. You never question what appears to be normal as one sure way of staying locked up in your time compartment. To study time, we must venture beyond the ordinary. And when we do, it opens up a whole new realm. Pete, would you help me with an experiment?
Sure.
Just take the egg and stand right over there. That's fine. Now, will you balance the egg on your head, please?
Hey, wait a minute. If you have in mind what I think you do, no thanks. But I'll be happy to set it up over here for you.
Well, maybe that would be safer, Pete. You know, if William Tell had been in the chicken business instead of the apple business, the story might have gone something like this. Of course, the flight of that arrow required but a tiny fraction of a second. But the high-speed camera slowed it down until we could study the entire action. Recently at the University of California at Los Angeles, a high-speed camera study was made of that split second involved in a head-on auto crash. That's what happens when we crack up at only 28 miles an hour. Not many of us keep it down to that anymore, do we? It's a bit disconcerting to realize that just a fleeting moment of this stuff we call time can introduce you to a whole eternity. The high-speed camera tells us part of the story of time. But strangely enough, the time compressor will show us even more. The time-lapse camera, or the time compressor, is just the opposite of a high-speed camera. Instead of slowing things down, it speeds them up. The world about us is alive with action and movement that we miss because it's too slow. There's a veritable symphony of movement that we never see because we're locked up in our own little time compartment. The time compressor can help us break out of our time prison. Here's a good example of movement that we can't see. Let's set the clock now for 11 o'clock. Right, the clock is running. The hands are moving all the time. You can't see them move. Oh, if you watched long enough, you could tell that they had moved, but you can't see the movement. That is, not unless we use the time compressor. Did it seem to you that the hands of the clock speeded up and slowed down? Well, actually, they didn't change speed at all. The clock kept right on running at standard clock speed. You've been watching it for a whole day. Now, we just changed your time reference by changing the interval like this. Every time the lights go on, the camera takes one picture. If you're still not convinced about that clock, maybe this will help. That isn't a magician's rose. It's a flower right out of the garden. This time, you watch the clock and the rose. We are now taking pictures at a 10-minute interval. Of course, we're projecting them at standard sound speed. This means that we are compressing 72 hours into just 18 seconds. Yes, this is a real rose. And these are real whiskers, too. You see, I haven't shaved since you started to watch that rosebud open 3 days and nights ago. Gives you something to think about, doesn't it? This is a 3-foot length of standard 16-millimeter motion picture film. On it, there are 120 separate pictures. This 3 feet of film could go through the high-speed camera in a... Oh, I shaved while you were looking at the close-up of the film. You see, we used the time-lapse camera to take the close-up, so there was plenty of time. This 3 feet of film could go through the high-speed camera in a thousandth of a second. The same length of film in the time-lapse...
The heartthrobs of the pest control community are the Lepidoptera, the flutterby. Sorry, Irwin, but the moth in the lovely evening is not only something that people adore as they come to your home, but it's also something that they may not quite understand. So what about the boys? The ladies are running around laying eggs, finding a suitable host plant. But the boys, sometimes using their chemoreceptive antennae, often flying many miles, not feeding, some occasionally stopping for a drink, will find a lovely lady and then exude their hair pencils, as you can see pictured here. The hair pencil is in one part an object of obsession for the female. It is a aphrodisiac and a tranquilizer. So, the moth. The moths that we know, some of them stay outside, and that is good. But there are two species of moth in North Carolina that like to come inside. These are the ones that come into our closets, the scourges of our closets. The ones that are always after our cashmere sweaters. Once you have found one moth in your closet, one tiny moth hole, the infestation is complete. You really have thousands, the generations 4 or 5, 6, 7, 8 generations per year. And none of your cashmere sweaters are safe. The only thing you can do is switch to plastics. And of course, this inspires one more song.
What are you doing with my cashmere sweater? No! I bought those when I was on vacation. I've had them for years, and now my cashmere Irwin, your lovely
Suit that was made out of wool and duress. Last you sneaky little sneak, coming round the corner, trying to catch me. I see you underneath the door, sneaking nearby, only like you're 24. You're sneaking.
Don't know, Irwin, this is what's going to happen to your suits, your lovely wool suits. You sneaky little sneak, coming around the corner, looking at me. You think I don't notice, but I see it clear. You're sneaking nearby, but I have no fear of sneaking. Something sneaking. A lot like sneaky.
I'd like you to meet a friend of mine who His name is Linnaeus. Electrophorus electricus Linnaeus. Here at the lab, we just call him Joe. He isn't exactly what you'd call a raving beauty, is he? But he has his points. For one thing, he's quite a swimmer. Notice the wave motion of the long ventral fin. As the waves travel toward the rear, the eel is propelled forward. Reverse, the waves travel toward the head. How about ascending and descending? Well, to ascend, he merely starts waves at the center, which go both ways. And to descend, the waves start at both ends and work toward the middle. Joe is commonly called an electric eel. But actually, it isn't an eel at all, but a fish of the carp or catfish family. Now, the eel part of his name may not be correct, but he sure came by the electric part honestly. There are stories of cattle, horses, even human beings being killed by the electric shock of eels just like this. In fact, along the Amazon River, ranchers have lost so many cattle that they have what they call electric eel drives. They herd the eels into shallow water and then they kill them with their machetes. Oh yes, they have insulated handles on the machetes. Now, of course, electrical impulses can't be seen. But if we put an electrode at each end of the tank, we can hear the electrical discharge on a loudspeaker. Now, those gentle pulses are part of the eel's radar system. In some mysterious way, he uses them to locate his food. Now, so far as we know, all adult electric eels are blind. They have heavy cataracts on their eyes. Now, eels feed on small fish, and if it weren't for this radar system, they'd starve to death. Now, when an eel locates a fish or when he is disturbed, he puts out what we call the double whammy. This is a terrific shock that stuns anything in the water nearby. The only way you can describe Joe's table manners is to say that they're downright shocking. Now, the electric eel, unlike most fish, is an air breather. It must rise to the surface from time to time for air. For this reason, he can be quite comfortable out of water. Now, the vital organs of the electric eel are all in the front 10 inches of his body. The rest is pure power plant. And believe it or not, he can generate more than 500 volts. Here we have a bank of 36 neon lamps. We'll connect these to our eel electrodes. Now, of course, the eel is designed to operate in water. His electrical system doesn't function too well in air, but even under these conditions, he should give us enough power to light the lights. For some reason, people seem to find it difficult to believe that a fish could put out any considerable amount of power. Even some of the folks here at the laboratory have been just a little bit skeptical about Joe's electrical prowess. And for that reason, we've asked a few of them if they wouldn't help us in an experiment. Will you have the group come in now, please? All right, Dave. You'd stand right over here, please. The rest of you just line up there. You're right over here, Mr. Humphrey. That's fine. Now, Dave, if you'll take this, please, and hold it in your right hand. Louis, you hold this one. That's fine. Now, everybody join hands. That's right. Now, you're connected in series. Now, there are 5 of you. That means that each of you will receive just 1/5 of the total voltage of the eel. Now, relax. We'll give you the low voltage tap first. You ready? Did you feel that? Wasn't bad, was it? Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to have you meet a group of confirmed believers in electric eels. Thank you very much. Now, where did that electricity come from? Strange as it may seem, the eel's electric tissue is made up of cells very much like the cells that make up the nerves of our own bodies. These cells are called electroplaques. Here is a crude model of one of these cells. Actually, the electroplaque is a tiny battery, 1/25 of an inch thick. Now, in a flashlight, there are 3 cells. Each cell generates 1.5 volts. 3 of them in series produce the 4.5 volts necessary for the lamp. The eel's battery produces 1/10 of a volt. 10 of them in series will produce 1 volt. Well, at this rate, it would take 5,000 of these to produce the 500 volts of the eel. Well, he's got them and then some. An eel like Joe here probably has 250,000 electric cells. Connect them in series, 5,000 of them, and you have the 500 volts. The rest of them are connected in parallel to build up the current capacity. Now, each one of these tiny batteries has an electronic switch controlled by a signal sent along the nerve fiber connected to it. When an eel wants to shock something, it throws hundreds of thousands of switches all at once just by thinking about it. But what to me is even more amazing is that when Joe's battery is run down, he can recharge them, all of them, in just 1,000th of a second. That's quite a power plant, isn't it? The eel's electrical system is composed of 3 main parts. The first is called the large electric organ. This is the source of the eel's main voltage. Now, the function of this organ, called the organ of Hunter, is still somewhat of a mystery, although scientists believe that in some way it works with the large organ in producing the double whammy. This organ, called the bundle of socks, is to me the most wonderful. It has been definitely identified as the source of those mysterious radar pulses. In other words, this is the power plant for the eel's radar transmitter. Now, of course, a radar system must have a receiver also. Do you notice those pits located in rows along the front part of the eel? The other night I was in New York City talking with Dr. Christopher Coates, director of the New York Zoological Society. Dr. Coates is the world's foremost authority on electric eels. He performed an experiment recently that seems to indicate that those pits are a definite part of the eel's radar receiving system. Now, if Joe is willing to cooperate, we can perform a similar experiment here. The problem is to render Joe's radar system temporarily inoperative. Now, if we paint these pits with an insulating liquid, and if these pits have anything to do with the radar apparatus, Joe will find it very difficult to locate a fish. Oh, he won't go hungry. This is a liquid that will wash off very rapidly. All right, Joe, let's go back into your tank. That's right. Come on out now, like a good fellow. Now, we want to give him a good supply of fish. All right, Joe is surrounded by his favorite delicacy, baby trout. But for the next few moments at least,
those fish are just as safe as if there weren't an electric eel within 1,000 miles. You see, Joe's radar's on the blink. Oh, his transmitter's working all right. He's still putting out those radar pulses. Actually, it's his receiver that's not operating. Now, let's think for just a moment about what that means. To a certain extent, we can locate objects with our ears. We can tell roughly the direction from which a sound is coming. But you know, if I were blindfolded, I'd sure hate to try to catch a greased pig simply by listening to its squeal. But this problem, compared to Joe's, is relatively simple. You see, sound travels 1,100 feet per second in air. But Joe's radar pulses travel at the speed of light, 186,000 miles per second. This means that an electric eel's radar system must be able to interpret time difference that is less than 1/1000th of a second. This is so amazing as to be almost beyond belief. Yes, Joe, you're quite a fellow. You may not win any beauty contests, but you've given us a lot to think about. You've given us a new understanding of the God who made us all.
Hey everybody. Irene had to go. I'm sorry. She had to go because there was a pet emergency. But she sent me here as an ambassador for moths because, as you can see, I'm the Mothman. I'm from West Virginia. Hold on, let me turn this down. You can't hear me. I'm the Mothman, and I'm from West Virginia. Right. I'm thought to be really a problem, scary, but it's just because my eyes reflect at night, as you can see. But so I'm not just the Mothman. I'm actually a middle-aged Mothman. Because I'm middle-aged, which in moth terms means I'm about 2 weeks old. Right. I don't feed as an adult. Yeah. So, that's long, actually. Yeah, for middle-aged, for being a moth and stuff. Well, okay. So, middle-aged Mothman, my short name is Ma'am. Middle... M-A-M-M, ma'am. Yeah. Well, so there's a couple things you might not know about me as Mothman, because I don't think Irene introduced me very well. And Irwin didn't say anything that I was coming on, but I won't take it personally this time. But my cousin's name is Mothra, and she was gonna come tonight, but she's been having problems with a lizard. Right. Okay. So, here's a joke for you. How many moths does it take to screw it? We like light, right? Like light. We go to light at night, like light bulbs and stuff. How many moths does it take to screw in a light bulb? It does. It takes 2. How did you know that? That's so weird. All right, this is the second part of that joke. How many moths does it take to screw in a light bulb? It's still 2. Right. Okay. So this is my point. So
I'm actually Rosy Maple Moth. Rosy Maple Moth.
And because you can see I got this nice got this pink. I don't know if you can see this, but I got my hair pencils out. Right? Okay. I'm a pink rosy maple moth. Beautiful. Saturn. I'm a Saturnine.
Which means that I don't. I'm named after a Greek god and don't yeah, don't feed as an adult. There's also the little secret that I want to tell you about, and that is the issue with the butterfly.
Yeah, there we go. Sorry. I'm a moth, which I know everybody knows about butterflies, and everybody thinks like butterflies. They're so cool. They fly during the day, and moths fly at night. This is a stick of butter, right? Butter, right? You get it. Butterfly actually means butter liquor. But there's other things that the butterflies don't want you to know about. Like, just because they're day flyers, they got all these colors and stuff, doesn't really mean they're really that great. They're butter lickers, right? Even their name says so. But it's more than that. There's some dirty little secrets the butterflies don't want you to know about. I'm gonna tell you. Butterfly butter liquor. But there's some other things they like to lick too. Like dead fish. Yeah. And they also like hold on, let me pause this a second. They also like poop. I mean, this is for real, right? Like butterflies sitting on a scat. I'm not making this up, right? Not making it up. Anyway, so with that in mind,
I'm gonna sing you a little song. Yeah.
and this is a space holding slide, and this is my foray into beautiful music. Coming to you whenever I can. I see you at night. Knock, 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 let me in. The window is just a barrier for you to be my friend. I love you. I know that you'll love me too. Let me in, I won't lay eggs on your cashmere sweaters. I'm a middle-aged Mothman. I'm coming to you whenever I can. You see me at night. Knock, 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 let me in. The light in your house is so bright. Wait, Skip, did you unplug me? Oh no, it's over. Sorry.
Maybe next time.
Thanks for thanks for tuning in, and thanks to Irene Moon. You can come over. Thanks. Yeah, that was awesome, and yeah, we might have to do this again.
Yeah, for sure.
Hit the road, coming to your town, talking about
Irwin Moon and Irene Moon. Yeah, going at it. Yeah, wrestling style.
Yeah, so thanks again for tuning in. I'll see some of you guys on Monday. Take care.